Thank you for joining in today. I would like to inform you that we have reached midway in our series of 8 webinars planned along with our knowledge partners IALD, who have been instrumental in creating awareness and educating the industry about the various aspects of lighting. We would also like to thank our event partner, K-Light, for supporting our event series. Here is a short video clip about K-Light. We would also like to thank our new event partner, LTech, for extending their support to our webinar series. LTech are the pioneer in the lighting industry and are in the development of dimmable solution for LED fixtures. With an extensive knowledge and through R&D in domain, they cater to all the dimmable lighting protocols. Furthermore, they are currently launching 5.0 BLE MASH network to meet the current trends of the global market. For more information, you can check out their website www.ltech.in. Thank you for your attention. With this, I would like to hand over the session to Ms. Purvi Kamar, our moderator for today's session. Over to you, Purvi.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to some of us as well. We're all here for the LED Summit. We're all here for the LED Summit, and today our topic is light pollution, time to mitigate its impact. For starters, we'd like to keep this interactive, so there's going to be a few poll questions Also, I request you to send out all your questions within the chat box. We can address them at the end of the discussion. So let's get started. I'd like to share my screen to speak a little bit about the topic. So what is light pollution? We've heard of air pollution, sound pollution. We've also heard of soil pollution, but what is light pollution? This is a picture I have on the screen of a beach in Croatia. I think this image is quite representative of the topic. We've got the sky visible. Onto the left side, we do see the galaxy, our Milky Way. Onto the right, we see the bay, which is the beach. And this is supposedly a party hub. So you see the spill of light into the air and your night sky automatically disappears. You see much lesser of the sky and the stars. And eventually when this grows, it then becomes permanently you're unable to then see the sky at all. Right. Now, taking this context to India, this is a picture of a bridge that is very close to my heart. I grew up driving past this bridge in Goa. It's called the Mandovi Bridge. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, a lot of you know it. It's a bridge that connects Panjim and Porvorim. And just 2 years ago, it was illuminated, 2019, illuminated beautifully. Every single person that was in the car while we drove past said, Puvi, did you have a look at this lighting? Did you see it? It is beautiful. But little did anybody sitting in the car with me notice or even point out the topic of light pollution. And I said, oh my God, it's a lot of light is going into the sky. I mean, it looks stunning, but what about the pollution? And everyone just alarmed to say, what pollution? What are you talking about? And that's when, I realized that a lot of us don't know the topic of light pollution or how unaware we are. And you see in these images to the right and to the bottom, they're beautiful colors. It does a dynamic lighting. It contributes to the bridge. It celebrates the bridge, but at what cost? At least I would say, looking at these images, at least a majority portion of the light is going into the sky. Right. So as per research, we are given to believe that the Milky Way is hidden from 1/3 of humanity. Now, this to me is very scary. What will the future generations see? Will they ever be able to go out and stargaze or look at the stars? Can you show them Mars, for example, or Jupiter when we actually see them on some of the nights in the sky? This is an atlas of the world map where you see the yellower, the brighter, redder portions are definitely more dangerous than the blue regions. We've got India here, but you see that a lot of the world is already affected by this phenomenon. But there is hope. And here we are sitting with our panelists to speak about what we could do and how we could mitigate it. Yes, sorry. So back to our panelists. I would like to introduce Harshita Shetty, a very dear friend who I've known for a long time, an architectural lighting designer based out of Bangalore, India. She's the principal designer of a boutique lighting design practice called Light Inspired Thinking. Light Inspired Thinking caters to high-end residential and hospitality and even heritage projects. Before setting up her practice, Harshita has worked extensively in Dubai, London, and Milan for leading lighting design houses, including DPA Lighting, Nulty, and Hirschbender Associates. Her diverse exposure has given her a unique point of view towards the art of illumination. She's an architect by training and has acquired her master's in lighting design from the Hochschule-Wismar University, Germany. She's an active educator and is fond of mentoring students on lighting design and technology. She enjoys exploring the potential of light art in urban spaces. She's also an active member of ILD India. Our second panelist is Jane Slade, who is the specification sales manager for Spec Lines in Massachusetts, a lighting manufacturer's representative agency specializing in outdoor lighting. Most importantly, she is a lighting educator and researcher at Anatomy of Light, researching the many ways in which light impacts our environment, human health, wildlife, biodiversity, and interdependence. Jane is the co-host of a podcast as well called Starving for Darkness, where these impacts are also discussed in depth. Jane Slade is a recent Richard Kelly Grant recipient for explorations into the social and emotional impacts of light and lighting. Through her work in creating lighting fixtures from waste materials in India, and through art, installations focused on manipulating emotional experiences with light and color. She's a member of the IES Committee for Outdoor Environment Lighting, the IES Progress Committee, a contributor to LD+A on the topic of wildlife, and is currently writing a book about natural daylight cycle. Jane, I'm really looking forward to this book. So welcome to both our panelists. Before we get started, I'd like to put out a poll question to our audience to understand the backgrounds. So the question here goes, if we could pull up the question. Here. So which of the following categories best describes your nature of business? You have 15 seconds to answer them, please. A, architecture and interior design. B, government or public administration. C, lighting design, manufacturing, sales, and D, others. We wait for the answer. Okay, so we have 16% of people out of the design industry, architecture and interiors, 2 from government and public administration buildings, 63 from lighting design, manufacturing and sales, and 19% others. Nice. Good mix, I would say. Right, so let's get started. Harshita, the question is to you, first question. As a lighting designer and an avid traveler, you have now lived in different parts of the world, developed as well as developing. So what do you think contribute to light pollution? You're mute, yeah.
Hi, Purvi. Thanks for the great introduction. This is an interesting question. Yes, I've lived in multiple places. So in India, Mozambique, Dubai, London, Milan. So I've seen the developing countries and the developed countries. So there, in terms of light pollution, there is a difference in the way the light pollution happens in these different places. So if I start with India, so in the recent maybe 20 years, there's been so much development and growth and construction that has happened that the nature of the streets, the nature of the buildings have just transformed. So the lighting has just been added on to this to the streets which got converted. So because of that, there's a lot of light clutter, which is one of the main causes of pollution in India. So there are dense areas where there's a lot of light, and then because of the commerce and the development there, and also because a lot of construction activities have taken place organically over a period of time. So that is something that really creates a lot of disturbance in terms of lighting. Another thing that is also something that we are concerned about in India is about security. So lighting gets associated with safety. So, what we believe is the more you light, the better it is. And, okay, for wherever there is lighting in public plazas, if you want to feel safe, there should be more lighting. But that's not true. More light does not equal to a safer environment. It's about having a better lighting. That's another concern. The third thing that is also very unique to India is the fact that we have a lot of advertisements, hoardings, cars, and signages, and it creates so much light trespass, it creates so much light glow, it creates glare. So these are unintended, but it does create a lot of light pollution. And because of this, and also I think there's a bit of lack of awareness. But for example, when I lived in Dubai, it's a completely different place, because everything is driven by tourism, by commerce, right? So, and every building is a landmark. So when every building is a landmark and every building is trying to compete with other, lighting here plays a role of really drawing your eyes to the building. So it has to be iconic, and what that does is to create so much sky glow. And you don't want to be lighting up the sky, but that happens. I'm sure you've seen the Burj Khalifa, the laser light installation, which has been recently done, and it's beautiful, of course. But what happens is that you're lighting up the sky instead of lighting up a surface, and instead of lighting pointing downwards. So this creates a lot of sky glow. So these are some intended or unintended impacts of light pollution. Other than that, I think in European countries, I think the concern here is that the nightlife is longer, right? You can stay out longer in the evening. So I think maybe that's why the lights are on for a longer time. Maybe the lack of light control systems. There seems to be more awareness, but I think those are the main reasons which are causing light pollution in different areas in the world.
How would you feel about our festivities in India, because light is so close to us culturally as well? For example, Diwali or any celebration or an inauguration, we always have crackers, in the sky. So how would you feel about that? Well, what is your take on it?
So Purvi, actually, we had an interesting talk about this in our office. For example, because there isn't enough awareness about light pollution. We used to always light up diyas, for Diwali. It's a festival of lights, and everyone's lighting up diyas. And today, they're using electric diyas. So you're creating light pollution without realizing, because people in India have this fascination towards light, right? So by lighting up these electric diyas, you're actually, you'd rather light up respect the culture, the festival, and light up a diya with a flame. It'll also keep the moth away, and it gives you this beautiful light instead of using an electric source of light, which creates more light pollution. So I think it's something that we need to just be aware of, and I think that will help the whole system.
Yeah. So Jane, question to you. You've been in India a lot as well, and you've studied, traveled through India as well. So how do you feel on the global scale, where does India stand? How dangerous do you think it is, the topic of light pollution?
So we're all equally in danger, because if we think of the Earth not just as a space or a globe, it's also shared for time. And so night is naturally 50% of the Earth. And so when we are shining light on all the time, we're actually changing the entire way that we use the Earth. And this has an impact on wildlife. So in terms of wildlife's impacts, they're immense. But so there's no person on Earth that wouldn't be impacted by that, no matter where the light pollution is coming from. And so when you look at that map, all of that light that you showed in that global map was not there 50 years ago. It's like a cancer that has cropped up and it's blooming, and it was not there, and it has amazing triggers upon wildlife. And I loved that picture that you showed, Purvi, of the light in Croatia kind of blanching the sky. Because as humans, we think of starlight as being kind of fun and nice. But we used to use starlight to travel. We used it, if you have ever heard that expression, red sky at night, sailors delight, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. That was our information saying if the weather was coming or going. So the sky is about survival for many species, whether it's birds, whales, dung beetles. All three of those species, just as examples, astronavigate. So they need to find the map of the stars to be able to get to where they're going. And when we make the sky glow, they can no longer glean this information, and then we're blocking their travel and their migration. So everyone is in danger, and one fixture has the ability to pollute up to 120 miles away. So it is an immense danger. And so the impacts that it has in the short term is that we're changing our own brains because we're never spending any time in any dim light. We used to spend time next to firesides in the evening. We used to look up at the stars. One of the first questions we ask every guest on our podcast is, please tell us about a dark sky experience that left you awestruck. And every guest shares a feeling infinitesimal and small, and like they kind of had a better understanding of their place in the universe after even just one night under the stars. But that's our long-term loss. It's a long-term loss of a short-term loss of our meditation in the evenings. But in the long term, that's what scares me, because we are triggering wildlife. We make plants grow longer and leaner to fight when we shine light at night, plants think they're being outcompeted in the tree canopy. So they'll grow really long and lean instead of developing leaves. So we're changing the way plants are building themselves. And then pollinators, we actually have two types. We have active during the day, diurnal, and then active during the night, nocturnal. Well, in studies, they've shown that nocturnal pollinators will actually not pollinate in the presence of light. And then they studied that a plant nearby where there was light present, and that plant also produced less fruit. And so what's happening is these pollinators are then hanging out by street lights. And it was recently cited that bats, the new normal for bats is to hang out at streetlights and just eat the fast food of the insects. And so when you back up, you have the bat behaving differently, the plant growing less fruit, and the insects are behaving differently and not pollinating. And what scares me most is not the one species, it's the relationships between the species are changing. And we have no idea how that will cascade out through our environment. So long-term, it's a loss of meditation. A short-term, it's a loss of meditation. But long-term, we have no idea what will happen when we change the 50% of night on the planet for wildlife.
Yeah, that sounds very scary. But let's ask the audience if we have an idea how bad it is today, how globally we're affected. So let's get to the poll question too. We have a question for you, audience. So what, according to you, is the percentage of world population living under light polluted night skies? Your options are 20%, 40%, 60%, and 80%. Please punch in your answers. Okay, right. So majority people say 43% of our audience says 60%. Only 11% say 80%. The truth is the answer is 80%. 80% of our night skies are impacted. This is, it's almost too late, but apparently it's not too late. So there is hope, isn't it? Right. So moving on, Jane, you were talking about dung beetles and turtles, because we know that turtles sort of move in the direction of moonlight. But would you like to shed light on the behavioral changes due to just very simple wrong street lighting, let's say?
Yes. So I truly believe that we have so much just bad, thoughtless lighting that if we just started there and concentrated on visibility versus brightness, we could do a much better job, and that it's a false dichotomy that we can't light for human activity and also protect wildlife through the use of optics and controls. With sea turtles, one of my issues with sea turtles is that traditionally it's been the only animal that's gotten any focus with regard to light pollution. And that's because sea turtles are adorable and they die on beaches and it's easy to care. And I often juxtapose that to a dung beetle because that's, you know, a less attractive species for obvious reasons. But dung beetles actually astronavigate. They astronavigate, they put them in a planetarium, so like a fake sky. And when the stars were on, the dung beetles moved in straight, narrow paths, which is ideal because they want to avoid predators and competitors. But when the lights were off, they scattered into random movement. And so that's just to show you that dung beetles astronavigate, whales astronavigate, and also sea turtles, little baby sea turtles, are looking for that blue light, the moonlight over water. And it always gets me because I applaud manufacturers who are trying to make sea turtle friendly lighting, but that nomenclature isn't exactly ideal because the best lighting is really going to be when lighting is off. And we should really be better controlling our light. Sea turtle lighting is usually very orange and amber to look as far away from the moon as possible. So we can do a better job if we just start curating more, but we're just throwing lights up at random and we think brighter is better, but it's actually impairing our own visibility.
Yeah, as you said, best lighting is no lighting. That's a lot of, at least my clients as a practicing lighting designer would just raise their eyebrow when you say that. Harshita, how do you feel about this? How do you think people would react when you say, you know, hey, let's preserve the darkness?
Jane, it's very interesting. The best lighting is no lighting. I'm going to try this next time. So actually, when we say something like, I mean, in our practice, when we try to say something like this to the client or educate them about the fact that you don't have to light so much, I mean, because there's so much fascination with lighting, it's used as a tool to promote, to attract, to create attention. And especially when there is so many like for example F&B, hospitality, everything, there's so much to do with the lighting it up well, lighting it up brightly enough to draw attention. So I feel like there is going to be a lot of, and there is a lot of push when you tell people, let's light lesser, or let's, no light at all. So I think the better thing to do is to sort of educate them about how to light it correctly, so that you're not creating unnecessary, sky glow or unnecessary glare and disturbance, not to animals and to people, and stuff like that. Another concern that I've also noticed in my practice is, we all know, like, to avoid light pollution, it's always better to use lower fittings which are closer to the floor, so that the more objects are not illuminated, the larger area is not illuminated, you just have enough lighting where you need. But then when you have a conversation like this with a builder, and he's like, okay, I'll use 10 pole lights versus 30 bollards, there is a cost implication of it. And should I do it just because you're telling me that we're creating light, creating light pollution and creating problems, and so when it comes down to the numbers, what we try to get around is to sort of say to them is that it's better to go for bollards, but try to understand the floor material. So suppose you're using a shiny floor, or suppose you're using a lighter color floor, you need fittings of less wattages to give you more luminance. So this so the same thing, you can just design it more smartly. So that's the way we try to get around this whole discussion about, okay, should we use poles, should we use bollards, by trying to collaborate closely with the landscape architects, to collaborate closely with the architects, to understand the material and then write it light, because we have the technical knowledge to do so. Yeah, other than that, yeah, safety and safety is one more concern that people address to when you say light lesser. But I think we've spoken about this. It's not about no lighting, it's about writing it light. So right, so then, for example, if you light up a plaza correctly, you avoid hard shadows, you avoid dark zones. It's not about creating more brightness, it's about illuminating it right, so people feel a sense of safety. You can identify each other, but you do not have to illuminate every sort of surface. And that's an ongoing discussion, but I really think there is more awareness. And also I just remembered, like when I was in Dubai, so we have the Burj Khalifa with the laser lights, but you take a half an hour drive and you go to the desert. There are camping zones created to to go and do stargazing. So it's there are two different things, and it's so popular to go stargazing. So there is awareness. So we have to ask everyone, what do you want to see? Do you want to see a laser show, or do you want to see the stargazing, a star show at night? So I think eventually people will start appreciating the night sky. Yeah, but it is we're going to get there with more awareness.
Yes, they say awareness and education is everything. Harshita, thanks for throwing light as a lighting designer, but how about the rest of us as just citizens of this planet? Is there anything that we could do to mitigate light pollution? Jane, yeah, Harshita, you could go first, and then maybe Jane as well.
No, I'm happy for Jane to go ahead.
So one thing is, I think I always say tell a friend, because it's for some reason light pollution is not intuitive. It's once I do a lot of education. I have an hour seminar that I've given to many architects and designers, and at the onset there's like almost a gateway through this problem. So the first initial gate you have to get through is that light pollution is actually counterintuitive. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It seems like maybe a nuisance. Until then, if you can explain the impacts that it has on wildlife, then people understand actually how grave it really is. And once you get people to that point, they won't unsee it. So there's a little gateway to get over it. And so I feel like if you can help spread the word, that would be amazing, because in the 1950s here in the United States, there were doctors who said, oh, smoking actually can be good for you. You should try smoking. And so it's also probably it was counterintuitive back then that smoking caused cancer. Incidentally, light at night is a known carcinogen. So I think we really need to get to that tipping point of awareness, because, and this is to the hope that you mentioned, Purvi, that light pollution, of all the factors of climate change, could be solved with the flick of a switch. It's simply awareness. And we're leaving lights on we're not even using. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to start with that could really help. And I truly believe awareness is the biggest barrier.
Harshita, back to you. Do you think you can give us, say, examples of what people could do? Say, for example, turn your garden lights off. Do you think that would go a long way? These little things, because we're at least in India, we're a country of a large population. So if each one of us cared enough to turn off our garden lights, turn off the lights that we don't require, would you think that would go a long way, or any other solutions that we could look at?
Yeah. So I think in India specifically, maybe it's about ownership, right? So you hold yourself accountable. So I totally agree. People forget to turn off lights in their gardens, their living room. They go to another room and they forget to do it. And it's not because, because they don't realize what they're doing. With LEDs, they assume it's low energy, but you have a lot of internal spill light also, which is happening. So I think what we could do is maybe, if it is about forgetting things, move towards more of a sensor-based system, or look at lighting controls, so that people, which could be automated, so that when people go to if people are not using the space post maybe 12 o'clock, it just dims down a bit. So maybe this is something that they don't have to think about, but they get a system in place so that or a sensor, when they go to another room, it turns off. or if the garden lights dim down to 80% after 12 or something like that, which helps them be a little more, so it's something that they have to do, but then it helps them monitor how they're contributing to the surrounding neighborhood. Another thing that we could do, I think, also comes from like, for example, if we go to Indranagar, which is Bangalore, if we had some kind of brands, some kind of standards, because what is happening today is that secondary streets, streets which are not meant to be main commercial streets, have become commercialized today. So you're living in the same area, you're staying and sleeping in the same area where you have shops and stores, so there's so much light pollution. So what could help is that if there were some regulations that this is the kind of hierarchy that you need to maintain for this kind of street, so some kind of regulations, so it doesn't have to be very stringent, but when you have a guideline or something, something like that, people will start understanding it and then following it, because when you have these signages, when you have these media displays all competing with each other, they throw so much light on the streets, and then the next next door is trying to do the same thing. So you're just the quantity of it's really large, so you're just over illuminating the space. So maybe these small things, if the stakeholder takes care of it, then it becomes something that people could follow more easily.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jane, do you have anything to add to that? Because you're probably in the US. Do you have stringent regulations by the government to say, okay, this is a residential zone, you don't go above a certain amount of lux level on the vertical surfaces? Does it get technical with the requirements like that?
It's surprising, but the answer is no. And I would say across the world, we are all quite unprepared for the immense power of LED lighting. So LEDs really are just so much brighter, and it's so much easier to illuminate with them. They're tiny, they can be held up with a sticker. But Harshita, you brought up a really good point, which is that if we start with more municipal control or city control, and we start using the shared city lighting as a way to denote the time of day, or the shared time of what we want to declare nighttime and daytime, that we can start giving these cues to people to then maybe turn out their garden lights. So if we can control municipal lighting, so actually, while for the most part, Purvi, the answer is no, there's not a lot of consideration for different zones of areas. Here where I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it's quite an innovation, but the lighting system here is controlled so that at certain times of day in certain neighborhoods, the lighting will dim down to 30% of maximum output. And so that's really the future, where we are actually controlling our lights. And if you think about the term lighting controls, it really kind of catches us red-handed that we're not controlling our lighting. And so I really believe that we can totally light for human activity and then turn it down or keep it dim for the periods of time that we're not using it. And of all the types of pollution, we have everything we need to do that. We have lighting controls, we have the optics, we're just not doing it. We're just leaving the lights on because we're not really aware. And I will just say that there was a news release yesterday that the city of Pittsburgh here in Pennsylvania of the US, a fairly big city, just adopted a dark sky ordinance. So I'm hoping we can raise the awareness so that we can turn lights out that we're simply not using.
Great. Thank you, ladies. I think that brings us to the end of the session. However, I have one more poll question for the audience. If we could pull it up, please. Deepika, would you be able to pull up the third poll question? So here we go. Have you been able to witness our beautiful galaxy of stars in the night sky? I'm very curious about this answer. Okay.
Mm.
Right. That still gives us hope. 53% say yes, so that's still good. You would go out to look for the night sky. That's good enough reason to think about light pollution. Right. So let's open the stage to question and answers. Any questions? Do we have any questions? Okay, here we have a question. What is the next lighting technology in the industries for the world? Harshita, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, Purvi, I think this is a loaded question. But honestly speaking,
Yeah.
honestly speaking, like Jane said, I think we have the technology, we have everything. It's about using it right. We have the best optics, we have fittings which are designed so well that, you know, there is no light spill. So it's about using the technology right. So I would not say there is going to be an, at least from what I can see in exterior lighting, some drastic innovation. But yeah, that's that's where I'm at. It's about using what we have really well. You know, hiring lighting designers to do the job for you so that you're able to have a good solution.
I totally agree. And I would also add to that the next lighting boom is going to be darkness. So we have to use our lighting technology to reinstate darkness, to mimic the natural daylight cycle as much as possible, because that is our Rosetta Stone to which all life evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have another question. Any information, data about what the effect of such light pollution on human beings is? Yeah, I'm sure we can share content. Or Jane, would you like to give the audience any sort of link or platform that they could look up for more information on the topic?
Sure. Should I answer or just send a link?
Yeah, I think a link would be good enough. At a later point, we can organize that for that as well. Okay, there's one last question. I think we have time for one last question. Can facade lighting approach follow top to bottom instead of bottom to top illumination? Harshita.
Can you repeat the question, Purvi?
Can facade lighting approach follow top to bottom instead of bottom to top illumination?
So coming from a completely practical point of view, the reason why we don't do top to bottom is because of glare issues. You don't want people passing by to be looking up and really get, you know, see the LED chip and be really disturbed by it. So I would always hesitate on doing top to bottom. But when we do bottom to top is when we are concerned about, you know, creating sky glow. So what we tend to do is that use correct fittings which can be aimed correctly. So use directional fittings so you can aim it onto vertical surfaces, not onto the sky. You know, use a glare controller, you know, some kind of snoot so that you can you know, aim the fittings correctly, or for example, aim it onto a canopy. So my preference would still be bottom to top. And I would shrink away a bit from going from top to bottom. Yeah, that's my design thought, I think, for this.
I quite agree. I think it takes a lighting designer to get the right calculation and the optic in place to avoid light pollution. Thank you very much, everybody. On to you, Deepika.
Thank you, Purvi. Thank you, Jane, Harshita. It was a very eye-opening discussion today. We thank you all for your participation and support in today's webinar. We'd also like to invite you to be a part of our hybrid event, which is scheduled to take place from 18th to 20th November 2021 at IEML Greater Noida. You can register for the event by logging on to our website, www.ledexpo-delhi.com. We request you to please fill in the survey form at the end of the webinar to help us organize and plan many more such relevant seminars. We will be hosting our 5th webinar of the series on the topic Lighting Heritage Building. We hope to see you there as well. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.